Hello, I'm back again. So you might notice this thing seems a little bit different. Right, if I turn this guy on, this looks like a record box vinyl. It's full 12-inch. I'm running this, and as a quick demo, so I'm touching the mic occasionally. So I made a modification now to the SL-DZ-1200 that both stabilizes the wheel using vinyl, but also lets me use 12-inch vinyl without any permanent modifications to the machine. Actually not changing any of the, removing anything out of the original machine. I have to make a few tweaks here to finalize this. So I'll show how I tear down and then rebuild this, the stack of mods that I made. So first, last piece on top is the 12-inch vinyl. Right. So this is the record box of vinyl. Side B is a grippier. Side A is a little bit slippery. So I have side B up for me to touch. Right. So that's the vinyl here, and then underneath it, I'll talk about this piece in a moment. Right. The two main parts of this mod are essentially this standoff. This is a 1/4-inch plywood that I laser cut to have the same holes as the registration point, just a little bit tighter. And this essentially lifts the disc above all the stuff that's in here. And what I wanted to do is I didn't want to have to do the sensor mod that the SL-DZ-1200 Mark II design seems to need. Now I ordered one, and that design is almost certainly more robust than mine because it has nice machined metal parts. Everything here is laser cut. But I wanted to not have to make any changes to the machine. So I have this riser and this 1/4-inch riser. These laser cut boards, they're not all necessarily, well, I mean, they should be pretty close, but it's not quite thick enough to lift the vinyl above the post here with the strobe light. And you have to have a bit of clearance because vinyl is not perfectly flat. It's slightly dished. And in my case, I want side B to face up, but it's dished a little bit downwards, so I need a little bit of extra clearance. And that's what then I laser cut this piece of silicone that was a Daiso $2 silicone mat. And silicone sheets can also be cut in the laser. And it turns out pretty nice here. If I switch over here, right, and you can see that the edges and everything here are all quite nice. And then, so I have the main standoff and a little bit of extra shimming because I need a little bit of extra space, right? And you could cut this out of a lot of things. I thought of cutting it out of leather or other things, right? This provides almost but not enough grip for me to operate the vinyl without actually gluing anything together. But I think I will need to stick down at least this silicone sheet to the wood. The wood is a little bit slippery, and that I need to do. And then I have underneath this the original disc. And why is the original disc still here? The original disc is still here because I need the extra lift because my 1/4-inch plywood is not quite thick enough. So I need a little bit of extra lift. And so I left this piece in. And then there's this bracket here. I'll zoom in a bit. This bracket is as a couple of laser cut acrylic pieces that are held down. So it's essentially a C bracket. It's a C bracket that sorry, sipping coffee. It's a C bracket that is held onto the 2 screws that are unused. So there's this metal plate here, right? And this metal plate is screwed into the bearing shaft that's in the center where all of the materials are wound, all of the wires are wound through here. But there are only 2 screws there are 4 screw holes, but there's only 2 screws that are in use. The corner one here and a corner one here that's underneath this wiring. So I use the other 2 screws here as location points to screw down this oddly shaped bracket that then comes around here and has a hole in the middle. And then what I'm going to show also when I put this back together is then this hole in the middle, I put in a 7mm nylon spacer. And the reason why I use a 7mm nylon spacer is the holes, the standard for the holes in the middle of a vinyl record is something like 9/32 of an inch or something, essentially about 7.1 millimeters. So I use a 7mm spacer with an M3 screw and M3 nut. Now, a 7mm spacer, this 7mm spacer set that I bought off of Amazon, I tried lots of I thought I was going to use a dowel pin or other things, but I couldn't find 7mm anything. It's like they make 6mm and they make 8mm dowel pins. I couldn't find a 7mm anything. The 9mm, they do sell these spacer nuts on Amazon that I was able to get shipped pretty fast, right? Next day shipping. That have a 4mm hole inside of it. And that 4mm hole is, and this is an M3 nut, meaning it's an M3 screw, which is 3mm. And that gives about 1mm of play that I can use to fully align the location on the spindle, which to me looks perfectly dead on center. But this gives me a little play for me to align it exactly and then tighten it down. I'll show that process when I put this back together. Let me turn this off, actually. What I want to do right now is, this whole mechanism is a little bit heavier than it used to be. And so I want to reduce the friction a little bit by adjusting the, hold on, let me get, by adjusting the felt tensioner that I had before. So I'm going to take up this, do the standard thing where I take off the sensor.
Comrade, Leishstrom has invaded the chat.
I'll take off the sensor and then adjust that tensioning belt underneath, or adjust the slip mat that I put in. So I'll take this out, and I will take out the felt washer, which looks like it got beat up, but still serves its purpose. And then from my previous video, you recall that I removed I haven't put in the clips for this. The retaining clips are still left out, and therefore all I need to do is remove the sensor to lift the surface out. And then this is the homemade slip mat surface. Now I don't want to remove this because this also raises the surface, and I'm just barely above this post. So I actually don't want to raise the surface. What I have is I have these, I have 3 pieces of tape here. That we're sticking down the felt to the lower surface. So instead of having 2 slip interfaces, there'd be only 1 slip interface. And I want to increase the amount of slip a little, and thereby go back to having 2 slip interfaces. Right, which means it will slide, the felt will slide on both sides, between the top and the bottom. This guy is bolted in. I'm not going to take it off. I'll share the Fusion 360 design of this for in 3D, but in CAD. But essentially, if you look at this closely, it's just a C shape, right? It's got a base on the bottom that has a unique shape to locate to these 2 screws, and then it comes up on the side. Everything except for this side is 1/4 inch acrylic. This side here has to be, this riser here has to be 1/8 inch, because otherwise it'll hit the PC board, and I don't want to have to modify anything. I could have shaved it down because this part of the board is non-critical, but the idea was no modifications to the built-in machine hardware itself. And then I have a piece that comes across, because the risers, or the position of this C bracket, is located to those 2 points, to those 2 screws, then this should be on center. And when I look down, it is pretty much on center. I think it's actually exactly on center, but again, I have a millimeter of play to calibrate in case it's not. And so that is here. And then actually I'm going to, now that I have it open, I'll tighten these down a bit more into final position, because I know that I got it right. All right, so everything's now tight. I've got 2 slip interfaces. Now I'll put the assembly back together. So the riser's down. Now normally what you would do, if I were to put this back to stock configuration, is you'll see that there's a slot here, 1, 2, 3. These are the retaining clips for retaining the slip, this slip disc here, this to the platter, so that if it's turned upside down, this guy doesn't fall out. and damage the sensor or the encoding sheet here in on its way out. So when I put this back together, and I guess I'll leave camera 2 zoomed in. Normally, if I were to put this back to stock, right, I'd have to, this would be done with the disc and everything out. And then I'd have to actually flip this in order to, the platter and the slip surface here would go down together. But in my case now they're separate. Okay, so that's done. That's down. Now I need to lay down the felt washer again. For the 2 holes where the sensor is located. Then I'm going to lay down sensor, which I can kind of get in here, then put down that this way of putting the sensor back would not normally work. Normally you would not be able to lift that disc. Got 1 screw located. Screws are located now. Now I'll put the original disc back. And then I'll put the spacer disc. Spacer disc is pretty light. Put the spacer disc back. And a spacer disc is very tight on these pins. And because it's on the locating pins, there's no issue of it slipping. Okay, so that's looser than it was before. I think that is okay. And then I'm going to cut my scissors, pieces of this ultra thin transfer tape to hold down the orange guy. Actually, no, what I'm going to do is I'm going to position the additional spacer first. Another reason why I made this out of silicone is that I'm hoping that there's enough grip between the PVC of the vinyl and this silicone that I do not need to glue. I don't need to glue anything. That I don't need to tape down the vinyl to this surface here. That way I could, for cosmetic reasons, change up the vinyl whenever I wanted to. Okay, so I have this located now. Let me cut a little piece of tape here. And then I'll peel it up. Come on. the backing, stick this down. Okay. The next one, cut another little piece of tape. This guy down. The backing. Stick it down. Okay. So I've got those two there. Still aligned. Piece. Stick it down. Move the backing. Make sure that this is aligned nicely. Stick it down. Okay. 2, 3. Then I'll put one more here. Then I'll work on the center. I guess I'll do all 6. I'll do 2 more. Those are down. Now I'll do some in the center. Do the opposite side. Didn't do that one. I meant to do all 6. Forgot one.
Comrade Planner AE has invaded the chat.
Okay. Come on, remove. Double-sided tape. Okay. That is done. No, I was going to stick this guy down too. Okay, so I will stick down. Section here. So that's fairly slippery. The okay, fine. I'll do 2 more here and here, just to make sure there isn't any stretching. Dropped it somewhere. Oh, it's here. Can't lift it up so far anymore. Slide it in. Whoops, not far enough in. There we go. One. Then I'll do that side. It's in. Get the backing off. Okay, so that's pretty stuck down. Oh, whoops, one more thing. Let me reconnect the sensor. And then I need to rough in the the center pin. Did this before. There we go. This in. Oh, damn it. That's going to be a little hard to get. Ooh. Close. Let me get this in. I want this still able to move. Now, let me turn this on. Show you how we do the final tuning, location tuning. So now, right, the top can move around.
Oh, yeah.
So it's spinning now, and if it's out of kilter, so I pushed it way out of kilter, I can see here that from a 2D perspective, it's moving in and out. And actually, it seems to be self-centering all on its own. Right? But in any case, the way you do this, which is actually also a lathe technique, is you put a little bit of pressure. And that will then remove the eccentricity. And when you remove the eccentricity, what that's doing is it's moving this piece to become exactly on center. So I want to push down on it just enough that just looking at this part here where I'm pushing, right, that it doesn't look like it's wobbling from side to side. And then I'll tighten this guy down. All right, now it's on center. Doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Right? I mean, it's going to have a tendency to self-center. But also, I'm not actually reading this with a needle or anything. So it actually, it's mostly just so that there's less wear in the spindle, because in this case, the spindle is stationary. I do like that the spindle is nylon. It's plastic, so there's a little bit of lubrication. Okay. I think that there's enough. Let's see if I'm slipping. Got this here. I'll use the instant change button. Yep, still on point. Okay, good. So that means that the that there isn't any appreciable slip between the silicone and the record. So I don't need to tape the record to the silicone. I can just leave this as is. And that's it. The mod is done. Sorry for taking so long. I was hoping this would be a 10-minute thing, and it ended up dragging on to like 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes. But that's it. Hopefully this was interesting. And hopefully this will help you assemble this yourself if anyone decides to try it. Thanks for watching.